Hey guys, it's Eshani, aka Total Makeup Junkie 101. So the drugstore has been coming out with a lot of really exciting new releases as of late. And I feel like I haven't really done proper drugstore reviews on my channel in a hot minute. So when I saw these eyeshadow palettes on the shelf at my local Rite Aid, I got really excited. It's something that I haven't heard too much about. These are the new Physicians Formula Butter eyeshadow palettes. The Butter collection of Physicians Formula is basically turning into the Urban Decay Naked collection, where it started out with one really hit product, the Butter Bronzer, and now they're just kind of slapping the word butter onto everything. There's Butter blushes, Butter highlighters, Butter eyeshadows, Butter lip products. And I get it. I mean, if your brand is doing well with one specific marketing tactic, I mean, go for it. And obviously the marketing got to me because I am a really big fan of the Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer. It's probably my favorite bronzer of all time. And while I haven't experimented too much with their Butter highlighters or Butter blushes, these Butter eyeshadow palettes, I mean, they caught my eye. As of now, there are two different color families of this eyeshadow palette available. We've got Tropical Daze and Sultry Nights. Each of these palettes retails for $16.95 on the Physicians Formula website, but if you're familiar with the Physicians Formula brand, you know that they often go on sale. Specifically in like CVS and Rite Aid, I know they run 40% off sales all the time. When I actually purchased these palettes, they were buy one, get one free. So I ended up just paying for one of them and getting the other one for free. According to Physicians Formula, their website says that this is the ultimate must-have eyeshadow palette featuring 12 universally flattering shades to take you from Tropical Days to Sultry Nights. Incredibly soft and ultra creamy texture, can be applied wet or dry. And of course, as with all of Physicians Formula products, they're hypoallergenic, paraben-free, gluten-free, dermatologist-tested, clinically tested, oil-free, ophthalmologist-approved, and cruelty-free. So here's what the packaging of the palette looks like. It comes in a plastic palette, but it is really cute packaging. And then the back does have a layout of all of your shadows as well as the looks that you can get with each specific quad. The way this palette is laid out, while it does look like 12 pretty randomly assorted, random configuration pans, they are grouped vertically into quads. So if you look at them, you've got kind of like a neutral quad, a warm neutral quad, and then kind of a cool tone quad. This was the Tropical Days palette, by the way. And then in the Sultry Nights palette, again, the same configuration. We've got another neutral quad, kind of a dark coppery emerald quad, and then a very cool toned quad with a bluish gray and a black. One thing I do want to note about these palettes is they have the same butter scent that is in the bronzer and the blushes. It is that strong coconutty, beachy type scent, which doesn't necessarily bother me in face palettes, but the scent is pretty strong. And if the idea of a scent going on your eye area bothers you, that's just something to keep in mind. So before we talk about the texture of the shadows in these palettes, let me go ahead and show you guys full palette swatches so you can see how these shadows swatch on my arm. All of these shadows are actually named as well. This little graph on the back does have names, which is really nice. This first lineup is the Tropical Days palette. So from left to right, we have the shades Barefoot in Brazil, White Sands, Coastal Chic, Tan Lines, Sightseeing, Heat Wave, Sand Dunes, Coco Loco, Ready for Rio, Peer Pressure, Rolling Tides, and Island Hopping. And then the second lineup we have here is the Sultry Nights palette. From left to right, we have the shades Vacation, Coconut Kiss, Beach Beige, Off the Coast, Sundown, Sunset Vista, Rainforest Queen, Below the Horizon, Moonlight Beige, Reservation for Two, Midnight Stroll, and After Dark. As far as color layout is concerned, I would say that even though there is a day palette and then a night palette, I feel like both of these palettes can take you from day to night. In the day palette, there are dark enough shades down here to do some sort of bronzy, smoky look. And yes, while the night palette does go quite a bit darker because you are getting a black, you can definitely get a very day appropriate look with this palette as well. I like the overall variety of the colors in both palettes. I think both palettes, again, in terms of color scheme, are very versatile. Now let's talk about the most important part, which is the texture and formula. So there are a couple of different finishes in both of these palettes. There is a matte finish, there is a satin metallic finish, and then there is what I would call a straight up foiled finish. The interesting thing is that within each of those three finishes, the quality of the shades is still varied. In my opinion, the best quality finish in both of these palettes are the mattes. The mattes are also the most consistent finish. In this Tropical Daze palette, you are getting 7 mattes. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then in the Tropical Nights palette, you have what I would consider 5 matte finishes. This one up here is a mainly matte, but it does have a little bit of a satin finish. Then you're getting 2, 3, this one right here, number 4, again, is a matte base and does have a little bit of sparkle, but I would still consider it a matte. And then this one here is number 5. Overall, I would say the mattes are really nice. They're pigmented, they're blendable, they are pretty powdery. So if you use really fluffy brushes with them, you will get quite a bit of kind of kick up in the pan. But I mean, overall, I don't have an issue with the matte shadows. I think they are really good, very workable, very blendable. The only matte I did have trouble with is the purple, which, like I said, isn't completely matte. It does have a little bit of visible sparkle in the pan. When used, it performs like a matte shadow, but this one is patchy and not pigmented and not super blendable. It's not a great shadow. In terms of the what I would consider satin metallic shades, which basically deliver a shimmer across the lid, but it's not overly foily. In the Tropical Daze palette, you have 4 of those shades. We've got this bronzy color here, this one, and then these 2 shades. And then there are 3 of those in the Sultry Nights palette. They would be this one, and this one up here. This finish, I would have to say, is probably the most hit and miss. The reason I say that is because I feel like I can get those shadows to work pretty well when I use a brush. I feel like a brush really does pick up those shades, especially like a flat, stiff brush. It picks up the shades, it deposits the shades. I don't have much of an issue except for specific colors. The neutral toned colors in that kind of satin metallic finish work totally fine, but these 2 shades in the Tropical Daze palette, the purple and the blue, which in my opinion are kind of some of the standouts in this palette, those 2 shades are really disappointing. I'm sure you saw it in the swatches, but they don't swatch well. They also don't apply well with brushes. I can get them to work if I use them over a coordinating colored base, but getting that pigmentation all by itself without, you know, having to add some help, it's difficult. Those 2 shades, they're kind of disappointing. And then the third finish that I would say is in these palettes is a foiled finish. The Tropical Daze palette only has 1 foiled shadow, and it would be this one up here. And then the Sultry Nights palette has 4 kind of foiled shades. You've got these 2 colors right here, this emerald green and then this taupey color. The foiled finish is by far my least favorite. I feel like some of them either have too much binder, like these 2 shades right here, the kind of coppery shades in the Sultry Nights palette, I feel like are too stiff. Like they almost have too much binder that it's not allowing the actual pigmentation of the color to transfer onto the skin. And then you have some shades like the emerald green, and then in this Tropical Daze palette you have this color up here, which almost have too much pigment, not enough binder, and they apply just kind of flaky across the skin. I think Physicians Formula really missed the mark with those foiled shadows, especially since so many brands have done a really stellar foiled eyeshadow. Even if they're not necessarily called a foiled shadow, so many brands have a very metallic, rich, dense powder shadow formula, and it's kind of unfortunate to see Physicians Formula attempts it and just kind of miss the mark. I do really like the color schemes of both of the palettes. I think they're both a really good starting point for Physicians Formula, and these are still a $17 drugstore eyeshadow palette. Yeah, you can get them on sale. In my opinion, you should get them on sale, but retail price, they're still $16.95. And for $16.95 for this very hit and miss quality, I am not really down for it. I think if you're a big fan of the Physicians Formula butter lineup and you wanted to try these, I would say, I think if you go into it maybe expecting a little less or just kind of with a realistic expectation, I think you'll think they're okay, because that's really all they are. They're okay. They're like a C minus maybe. Like they're average. Rounding out this review with some housekeeping things, in terms of the amount of product you get in this palette, you are getting 15.6 grams of product total. Dividing that by the 12 colors you get, you're getting about 1.3 grams per pan. You are paying $1.09 per gram for the shadows in this palette. In my opinion, it's a totally acceptable price per gram. I think it's actually a good value. The palettes are also made in the US from domestic and foreign parts, and it is packaged in China. So there we have it. That is my review on the new Physicians Formula Butter eyeshadow palettes. Quite disappointed in them, not gonna lie, especially considering how much I love that bronzer. I really had high hopes for these. I don't hate them, and I think if Physicians Formula launches another palette with more unique colors, perhaps improves on the formula just a little bit, I mean, I'm keeping my eyes open for them. I'm not writing them off forever. Thank you guys so much for all of your love and support on my channel. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to subscribe and hit the bell so you guys are notified every time I upload a new video. And other than that, I will talk to you guys in my next video on Thursday. I'll see you then. Bye!